Set provocations for us all about the trajectories of new media art for the future. So in doing that, once we've done that, which should take 3 minutes each artist, they're not allowed to go over 3 minutes. So for that, for the artist, it's almost like the dogs on leash thing that you're going to be controlled. Thank you, it was humor that I was trying to put across there, so that we can have a fun evening. Not that it's fun because it's really serious, because nobody knows where we're going at the moment. But once they've given their provocations to you, then we'll split into groups so that you can have a more informed discussion about some of this. So rather than just having one person drive a discussion from here, I'd like to throw it all back on you, and then with the moderator, you'll be able to discuss what's going on. One of the people from the panel will be with you, and we'll split into the 5 tables. Each person who gives them their provocation that you might want to join, then hopefully you can go and join that table. If that table is full of people, and I can't count you all because I'm shocking at remembering counting numbers, but then you'd move on to the next table, and so on and so forth. So we get a smattering of everybody. Is that okay with everybody? Is that okay with everybody? Thank you. I can't hear you, Linz. That was my rock star sort of thing. So I have a 5-minute introduction, and I'm not sure, but what? No, mine's 5. I know the extra 2 minutes is a real perk, I must admit. But I just want to set a little bit of a context. So in 2018, I was invited to be the editor of the New Media Art Volume 2 for Artists and Practice. And so I mean, they asked somebody who's dyslexic, which is a very strange thing to do to start for an encyclopedia, but that's what happened. And here we are today. So 2018, I've struggled every day to help put this publication together. But my proposal for the encyclopedia was accepted, and it was mostly about trying to get the artist's voice to be heard over the boom of the theorists and the historians. And so I was very passionate about the artists and what they were doing. And asking artists to write 7,500 words and for nothing is a really hard thing to convince them to do. And quite rightly, a lot of them said no, which was a bit depressing. But I developed a series of themes, and so for each artist, and then I selected the artist to try and write about that theme. So like virtual reality, kinetics, electronic physical computing, robotics, performative interfaces. And then I'd select and invite them to write 7,500 words about that kind of theme. So rather than just about their practice, I don't think many artists didn't write about their work, which is something that I learned from doing this, that each chapter was kind of individual. Nobody wrote to a kind of formula, which I thought at the beginning everybody would have to do. But of course, I learned as I went along, and they were fantastic. And I would read the papers, not read them, I would make them into audio, and then I would jog at night, and I would listen to each person's 7,500 words, and then I'd Zoom meet them, and we'd have a great discussion. And this was all over COVID time, and so it was a very distressing time for a lot of people. But I'm going to just read you something just to set the scene, and then I've finished. It's from an email from Paul de Marinis that he wrote to me, an artist that I asked to write about sound. And After 2 years of chatting with him, he decided not to do it. So I'm reading somebody who isn't actually written a chapter for the thing. He says, somewhere around that time, he's talking about late 1990s, I read Bill Joy's piece, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us, prompted by the Anarchist Manifesto by Ted Kranzik. It rang a bell, a Pavlovian one, I think, awoke up for me, not the dinner bell it seemed for others. I'm a really shocking reader as well, I suppose you've noticed that. Artists become techno-philosophies and protagonists on the future, prognosticators on the future. I turned away towards the past in much of my work, trying to seek the distant cultural sources of our growing digital world in the course of my exploration into the long histories of technology discovery. I came across so many points where it all could have come out very differently. Yes, technology, but not this technology. And so I had to write back to him. And so I put some of my reply here. I understand your point that finally that media art that was discounted by most of the art institutions shows some reverie, and that it is now saying, I told you so. But I'm not sure that our generation of media artists are the same as the younger generation who grew up with the ubiquity of media or have the same concerns. There was a handful of impressionists, cubist artists, who were attempting to capture a new reality. Now there are thousands of impressionists who do not detract from the original intentions of the movement. I believe that media art is an ism, and as a movement needs some of the artists that were part of it to write about the complexities of making art with an ever-changing palette and fluctuations of technology's landscape. Your email reads beautifully like the post-media artist manifesto on what you have discovered so far. I am also not sure that anyone cares about the media artists who are pushing the boundaries of emerging technologies, not for material gain, but to place the discourse firmly in the humanities. Media artists were giving people gifts by exploring the future, and these gifts were freely given. They didn't have to be accepted by the public. They were still gifts. So, are we still giving gifts? Would be the question. So I'd like to ask the protagonist in this case, and I do apologize for my reading skills, and yeah, it's come up and sit down and give the thing, and then, yes? Who's the author of the mail? Sorry, I missed the name. Paul de Marinis? I might have pronounced that name incorrectly. It's somebody who... It's shocking. I don't know why everybody can't be called Smith. Make my life so much easier. Okay, so we're just going to start, let's say, randomly, and then we're going to maybe pass the... Because we're on the left of the dealer, I would give it to Kurt, and then we'll move around to 5. So we're not going to let Laurent speak. Otherwise it'd be 6, wouldn't it?
I didn't know that, but yeah, for reasons unbeknown. Oh yeah, Claudia. Oh, because she just arrived. Claudia, come up. Claudia. We didn't expect you to arrive so early. Come on. Please. All right, we have a... Sit here.
We're just trying to get to a time schedule, you see. I'm trying to keep people to 3 minutes. So if we go over 3 minutes, hey. they've got a timer here.
Okay, we're starting. All right, so hello, thanks for coming. Thrilled to be here on the occasion of, us writing together this insane volume 2, thanks to Paul, who took on this task, which I still don't understand, of torture. I mean, torturing himself, torturing us, and somehow the pandemic really helped, that there was so much time and nobody had an excuse like I'm too busy or something. So it came about. We haven't seen each other since then, I suppose, right? Not all together. So that's a special moment and moment of celebration. Thanks to Ars Electronica, obviously, as well, to provide a stage and humoring us in that moment. For the rest, I think I stand here for doom and gloom, so that's my point, I suppose. Some of it has to do that, we all come from before time. I like to say usually that I'm a dinosaur. I grew up with the minimum of digital. I was in my mid-20s, right? When was that? Or 80s, when the first personal computers arrived, and that was really a formative moment, an overwhelming, somewhat utopian moment, where sci-fi became reality. I, at least, were always hooked on sci-fi and all this, not just for the technology, because there was just some part, but from the beginning, and this is the other aspect I want to cover, there was always this dystopian aspect in science fiction, right? Like the AI that would take over, what's it called? Arthur J. Clarke. Anyway, the many aspects of psychological disarray and transformation, the shadows, if you will, of technology. And I have to say that going around here and looking at the exhibition, which really in many ways resonant, and there's this overarching topic of unease. I mean, you can feel it in a lot of work and a lot of statements, right, about the future, about where we are and how do we continue without actually the planet tilting over completely, yada, 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 climate change, 7 big tech companies that rule everything, like back to early capitalism, and when neo-feudalism matches like old feudalism effortlessly, all these kind of things. My particular, I think, topic here is that I think everybody's yet again sort of fascinated, intrigued, to say the least, if not seduced, by the potential of AI, soon supposedly AGI. Nobody really wants to talk about like the dark end of it, right? So there's no oversight. It's like done by mostly, but again, the 7 big tech companies in their pressure cooker labs were mostly men really cook up what supposedly will be beneficial to all of society on this planet. Nobody talks about that. Everybody remembers like crypto was like so energy intensive, right? And that is like wasteful and oh my God, crypto. Now AI and AGI is like 100 times bigger in terms of energy demand and all of that. So to come to the point, and then I end already, right? I'm already pushing it. The point being is, I propose that we stop with the optimism. I think there's no reason for optimism, and that we really subscribe for a moment at least to pessimism, to go in on collective depression and think about what's really happening, right? To take 2 or 3 steps back and remember that as artists, if that is still relevant, we are critics We are supposed to have the wide perspective, not the narrow perspective, not the blinders, and make actual statements of relevance, not just, go with the flow and be as tech happy as everybody else.
Thank you very much. Jeez, I'm so sorry about that, really.
Okay. I think you're randomly choosing. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, my provocation is, how can new media art address the issues of degrowth, ecofeminism, and biomimicry? Now, these movements all have something in common. They've always been influential in my own work, right from the beginning of my work, which is like from media art and performance art from the 1970s. And so I really feel that these are still valid movements today, and movements where we have to think about where does media art stand within those movements? How can we help people who are in those movements communicate their problems to the public, work with the public, work with citizen scientists and the public? So this to me is really important. So the common themes of those three movements are they address the problems of the workforce, gender, migration and equal representation, and shared economics. They are transformative ideas nurtured by people who care about our future and the future of the planet. They all feature the need to learn from nature. They encourage us to develop solutions to our planetary problems. They are not anti-technology, but mindful of the resources and the depletion caused by it. So I think these are really important movements. There's a lot of anthropologists, biologists, philosophers, and also scientists who are very, very interested in these movements. And these movements are active today. It's not like they died somewhere. Even though they started in the 70s, they're still very active. So the question is, how can we connect to those movements as media artists and offer the possibilities that we can nurture, like design, development, communications, criticism, within those movements? So my question is, how can we help to overcome the alienation that these movements might have from the public? And how can we generate a sense of responsibility for the preservation of natural systems, even though we're using a technology that withdraws an amazing amount of those natural systems? So this is something where we have to think quite seriously, I think, about where we are going. And those movements, I think, help us to try and find the possible way out of this mess. So these movements try to resist all forms of exploitation and value systems. They are really favoring cultural representation and inclusion. And this means inclusion also from inclusion of indigenous rights, the relationship to nature, and particularly with degrowth, the idea that we have to think about not being such incredibly overdone consumers. So this to me is interesting. That's it. Thank you. That's going to be my discussion at a round table. How does media art fit into these movements? Next.
Okay. Now, Olga. I should have introduced everybody, but I'm just presuming.
Can you introduce now? Because I've actually never met anybody here.
So I'll just pause that for a second then.
Yeah.
Just.
You want the mic? You want the mic? Good mic.
Of course. Kurt Henslager. Claudia Hart. Jill Scott. Olga Kiseleva. Krista Summerer. Laurent Mignon. Yes, thanks, sorry. And Victoria Vesna. And I'm Paul Thomas. Well, I was. And your time starts now.
Thank you. So, dear colleagues and friends, The future of knowledge does not in laboratory alone, not in archives isolated from the living world. The future of knowledge is already here. It is a frozen cultural heritage and biodiversity of the Arctic. For centuries, Arctic communities have lived with uncertainty, adapting to fragile ecosystems with ingenuity, resilience, and respect. Their languages, traditions, and creative expressions are not a relic of the past, they are guide to the future. Likewise, the Arctic biodiversity, its complex webs of interdependence, its capacity to regenerate under stress, offer models of balance and cooperation that humanity urgently needs. At a time when global crises deepen and climate instability challenge every society, the Arctic stands as a living laboratory of survival and sustainability. Its biocultural heritage is not only to be safeguarded, it must be activated. It must inform our policies, inspire our innovations, and reshape our collective imagination of what is possible. In this process, new media art has a crucial role to play. Today, artistic practice at the intersection of technology and culture must draw inspiration from Arctic, translating their wisdom into a new form of knowledge and ancestral futurist imaginary. Through new media art, we can bridge ancient traditions with future technology, creating space where resilience, reciprocity, and interdependence become tangible and transformative. The Arctic is not a periphery, but a center of knowledge for the world. The Arctic teaches us that survival is not domination, but coexistence. Its heritage reminds us that innovation is not extraction, but reciprocity. Its biodiversity proves that resilience is not strength alone, but interdependence. And its art, reminded through new media, invite us into a future where knowledge is ancestral, yet profoundly new. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for inviting Laurent Mignonneau and myself to this panel, and also for giving us the opportunity to be part of the Encyclopedia of Media Art, Artist and Practice book. It was really challenging but wonderful, and I really thank you for this enormous effort. From our experience over the past 33 years, we see that in the early 90s, when we started, it was mostly individual artists. You know, some people sit here, and also others are in the audience, who started to explore computer technologies. Many of us programmed themselves or developed interfaces and technologies because not much was available at that time on the market. So we had to actually make these things ourselves. And these projects were shown quickly at international fairs and conferences, and also, as far as I remember, SIGGRAPH, etc., drew a lot of international attention. And then after a couple of years, many of us, I think I can speak for many of us, also got very good teaching positions, become professors at universities. And often they also created innovative teaching programs. And now what we can see that these kind of teaching programs, they have become really ubiquitous and also very much standard in many art education fields. And we can see that very well here at the campus format, where more than almost 40 universities are presenting here with hundreds of art projects by the students. And on the other hand, what we also see very well here at Ars Electronica is that artistic research has become very popular. And also there are more and more such funding programs and, kind of institutional support programs for this kind of artistic research. But on the other hand, to be more critical, we can also see that innovation and novelty is one of the key aspects that these projects have to demonstrate. So a certain kind of instrumentalization of art is also taking place right now. So our provocations or our questions are, that keeps wondering us, ourselves also, can media art also be practiced outside of academia and research institutions and infrastructures? And is it actually still possible and affordable even for a single media artist or artist in general to create a sustainable career within the arts or the media arts? And also...
Well, there's another issue. An issue. Is it an issue, really? Media art has been developing. It has a long history today. And it has been developing in parallel of the contemporary art field, which is much bigger, but it's a specialized field, media art. However, the interaction between the two have not been really prominent, I will say, for a long time. And it's still like two tracks going forward. So my question is very simple. What are the connections between the media art and contemporary art? Basically, that's the question, and just maybe you have some ideas.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So, 3 minutes, right? Okay. So Krista and Laurent and I exhibited next to each other in 1993 at the SIGGRAPH in LA. And they were doing the plant project, the famous plant project most of you must know. I was doing palm trees with embedded televisions. And Lynn Hirschman was there, etc. But what struck me, we just had a celebration for Krista at the Botanical Gardens. And it was for her retirement, but also discussing how do we get out of academia. Now, she's doing it willfully. I'm at UCLA, so say no more. We just are not having anything that's supporting this kind of work. My provocation is, because I have a minute, is to ask, how can we unplug? How can we connect back to nature, to all these issues that came up, the Arctic, the ecofeminism, etc., and to even say that maybe the most rebellious thing we could do is to turn it all off, just to unplug and be with people we want to be with and spend time we want to do whatever. How long, the provocation is, how long could you do it for? So that's it, that's me.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, Claudia.
Okay, so I'm improvising. And I want to, I actually have a show up at the Carolina, and so I didn't rehearse and I didn't think I'd be here. But I'm responding to all of you, and I think one of the things that's the most telling is that I never met any of you. At Victoria, we have met, yes, but basically not.
I also improvised.
Yeah, right. So why have I never met any of you? Yes. Because I'm not really, and I want to also say this is my second Ars Electronica. I'm married to him, and I went another time when we were first together, and we've been together, I don't know.
2 years.
No, it's in the 30s or something, or 30, 31 or something. So this is my number 2 Ars Electronica. So why is that although I show in New York with a very famous media gallery, I never had the approval of the media art community because they told him all the time that I was too arty. So I actually am a bridge between the contemporary art world and the regular art world. And I'd like to offer art as the solution, because what art is good for is sharing. And so first it brings people together. It gives us a way, something to talk about together, a bridge. I think, and the best way to also make people communicate, and that's related to you as an unplugging thing, is to not be didactic, not to teach too much, to relate on an emotional level, for the art to be expressive, and allow that to be a bridge for people to come together and have some basis of communication. So I don't want to have a provocation. My provocation is I want to be on all of your, I will come around and share you, and I don't want to separate us all into 5 pods.
Oh, that's already planned.
Yeah, I know, but I want to be on all.
I mean, somebody who...
I want to run around between.
Yeah. No, it's great. So it's a possibility, isn't it? It's because we're all informal now. We can really do what we want with the time that we have. So my suggestion is that we break into groups, but there's a lot of you now to break and manage into to groups. The other thing is we all stay together. The difficulty of staying together is that not many people get to share their information and to synthesize some of the provocations that have been had. I mean, I accept that you have no provocation, which is, of course, a provocation by default, you know, and everybody... Yeah, and we all know. So we're in a situation now where we need to start to think about separating you out. Now, we do have 5 spots. So I'm going to ask for a show of hands for those who want to separate into 5 spots and those who want to... I've finished time, sorry. So those who want to stay together. And I... Sorry?
Sit together, please. We just want to stay.
Yeah, just one.
There's one.
You're such babies. Stay together. Okay, anybody want to say not stay together? So it's equal out now, 50-50. Yeah, okay. Small group it is. Derek has a casting vote. I'm sorry about that. You, Claudia, you've been outvoted by Derek. You can go and hit him later. So if we shut up, I'm not you. The phone keeps on. So if we could have.
Let's stay together.
Yeah. So let's have number 1 group there, which is Kurt and Claudia, and who's a Roma, and then number 2 group over where the session is, where the nice comfy chairs are over there. Number 3 group is already formed. Well done. Number 4 group over there, and number 5 group over there. And so that is Kurt there, Jill down in that one.
Do you have some drinks?
Yeah. And there, Olga over there, Krista over there, and Victoria over there. Now, what will happen is that they'll make notes, and you'll make notes as well, and then each table will then tell us what they learned, or what they did, or what they decided, and then we'll all come back together as a group then and have a really good time. I can't remember that. It's too much to remember. It's about 20 minutes that you have together to chat, and then it's about, I could be lying about that, and then it's 20 minutes of presenting what you had, and then it's 20 minutes of time to discuss. So could I ask you to go through your spots? So what we want to try and do now is get the provocateurs back up on stage and see if we can answer some of the questions that maybe were formed in the groups, but open those questions up to, so the people who were in the group know what the questions were that they had, and so we can try and stimulate some sort of discussion that involves you all participating in. And so we have microphones up here, and I've got a microphone in my hand, and might have somebody to help run the microphones around so people can actually say something. So does anybody want to start from the groups that had something exciting to say. And obviously Victoria's group has got something really exciting because she's still in the group. So the unplugged group are really unplugged now. Yeah, they're not gonna. That's what you get with unplugged. You just. So can we? So can anybody on the stage make a start by what they got from their group? There's some microphones there that are, and you pass one down.
Me? Okay.
Yeah. So you can start, Krista, if you want, just to say a few things about what might have been said by the group. Not much, but if anybody disagrees with what Krista says about what you said in the group, then please shout out, because she just might have written down anything when you were talking, and it might not have been.
Yeah, sorry, it's still a bit messy, my notes here. Maybe I'm just reading somehow the underlined statements that I noted on. So we started out, with these questions. How does media art and contemporary art coexist, or is there some kind of connection? Then also, is it possible for media artists to exist outside of academia and research infrastructures? And is it also possible and affordable for individual artists to create a career outside of these institutions? And so statements that we heard is that it's not about technology, it should be about the art. I think this was from a practicing artist statement. Then also that it's the thoughts that count first and not the technology, that we need to focus more on the reflection about technology and not so much about the technology itself. Then it also came up this idea that there are different types of media arts. There's the so-called Ars Electronica media art, but there's also the more hacker culture and not so official, more subversive type of art that is a bit outside of these institutions. Then, of course, it was discussed that a lot of the art that is shown here and also in other places is not really, it has to be already finished and produced. And there's not such a strong infrastructure for fundings and supports. Then we came somehow to this idea that, I think it was a person, it was you, who said that one could think about a support system that people who come here and like a particular artist or artwork could somehow make with a QR code a certain kind of, not donation, but a certain contribution to this artist, and send over some fundings or some support for this artist so they can fund their next project. And we had Jutta here from Ars Electronica, and she immediately said, yeah, we should propose this idea to the festival. So perhaps we could even do this in the future, at least propose it and see if people would react to it. Then there was also a discussion about the function of art. And we came to this point that it's not just, monetary capital, but also intellectual capital, that the intellectual capital of an artwork has also a very important value. Then Derek spoke about quantum technologies needs a voice, and that we, I hope I quote you correctly, that he said we need to change the human condition and we must rush out of the Anthropocene. That's a quote from you. And and then at the end we came also again more to a discussion about contemporary art, that there is a certain snobism in the art world about media art, and someone also stated that actually media art is way too low valued too low when people buy it, that it's compared to, say, more hyped artworks from the art field or from the contemporary art, the value is way too little when you consider that someone maybe spent 40 or 50 years of his career developing those things, that the value is way too little. And you said, Laurent, that we should maybe give even up the label of media art. And then someone said, yes, but it depends on the venue and the context. So lots of
yeah,
notes.
well, yes.
I just wondered if we should, if the people agree disagree, but you know that sometimes sometimes one could, or sometimes somebody in the audience could ask what the value not of media art, but of the artwork itself as an aesthetic object. So not as a. It turned off. Yeah, next off. Oh, right. I'll do one of those close-up ones, you know, the unplugged where they. But what the actual artwork is itself. So what's the value of the? So not the media. The media's displaying the interactivity or the artwork, but sometimes a discussion about the art that's being. Because is there a criteria for a good media art and a not good media artwork? I mean, who's been around the exhibition and made a criteria of, that's a great work, or, you know, I'm not so sure. So there's obviously a criteria, but do we really have anybody who's brave enough to stand up and say, let's say a lot of the work is not very good? Do you see what I mean? And which fits in, I'm trying to fit in with what you were, to be a bit more a protagonist and ask questions that you might disagree or agree with, because if we're going to make media art, it should be the best media art that's ever been made.
So Paul, you are suggesting that we make criterias, and we are all aware of the criterias in order to value all these works more clearly, or what is your idea?
Well, it's not really an idea, but things, you know, like if we're going to say that there is, that everybody's an artist, the sort of Warholian type of, then we need to sort of try and define if there is something about it that draws us into it, that makes us want to question, that makes us want, which is roughly the idea of the gift. You give a gift of something. It doesn't have to necessarily be received, but it's the gifts that actually change the way that we think about the world is what we're all looking for. And I think that media art has the potential to exploit this, but I don't think sometimes it can be just a recycling of media art, showing media art, showing media art. It can be, but tell me I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Thank you.
Here's why. No. This is where we're from the group with Kurt, and we just had some discussions that I think might speak a bit to this issue, these ideas. One, I'm Eric Zupka. Hi. Yeah. So we were talking about how Kurt was saying actually specifically that you know, a lot of these works that now have become more normalized and are more, you know, in the art market that's getting ignored from media art, or, you know, they've been able to sit with it more and it has more of an expressive quality. Perhaps it meets criteria better, I don't know. But there was a kind of experimental phase that was going on. And then we were talking at the same time about different works in whatever media, really, that maybe media art or this art, you know, in a specialized category serves more of a kind of exploratory function, or a sort of, okay, we've got these sort of received art notions. Maybe we also want people who are pioneering what the medium is. That's sad that would lead to 40, 50 years, you know, doing something that's underappreciated for its aesthetic value. At the same time, you've sort of maybe got this role for people who are looking at the medium itself, looking in a more meta way that's kind of, you know, exploring within that context. And maybe media art, as opposed to art, maybe that's a function that it sort of starts to address.
Does anybody want to take that further, or do you want to go on to...
Just the last comment about the question I was raising, you know, like the contemporary art and the media art field not being so interconnected, or interconnected but not revealed as such. And so there was a comment also that, you know, the very material that we are using is maybe making this difficult, you know, because the art field is keeping things alive for a very long time. It's promising to keep, you know, you buy something, you have it forever. It's not true, but it's just a feeling. And that is already making trouble with the very material. So one artist said he had the solution is to make the process digitally and produce artifacts out of it. And this you can sell. So this seems to be the articulation to, you know, be part of another field while you are in the media art field.
Okay, so our group actually talked about going beyond all of that criteria of the borders of media art out into expanding the notion of it to include impact workshops, discussions, context provision, engaging insiders, engaging people to raise awareness, involvement of the communities, working with communities in a different way. This is all, I mean, media has no longer confined, media art's no longer really confined to our pioneers sitting here. We are really now thinking much more, we have to think much more about the impact on society. So our discussion was really about that, you know, how can we expand the borders of what we consider to be a criteria for media art beyond this and start to work much more communally and much more about impact on society. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we had a very representative group with, like we got the artist from a new media pioneer to a young media artist, and also the colleagues working with design, from web design to the specialist of industrial innovation. And we had people from 7 countries representing 3 continents. And altogether, we drawn a kind of proposal for trajectory of new media art. We constated now we have a feeling of something unstable and unsure. And we would like to go in the direction of slow art and slow media with attitude and humanity. And we hope through techno-shamanism and healing go to the preservation. Thank you.
That goes right into the Unplug group, which was very small because not too many people want to unplug. But we had a very interesting discussion. So I started by asking, how long could you unplug? And Haitham, who I hope says a word about it too, said 9 hours. But the important thing is that we're talking about how there is a need for that you feel, but you can't do it. And what is it that's stopping you? And then we had Andrea, no, actually Irini said 2 hours max she could go with. Haitham said 9 hours. But then we figured out Andrea, I think, said she could go for 24 hours. She's already done this. And then we had a real radical in our group who did it for 2 months, Michael. And basically even now he's like cutting off the bandwidth on purpose and just using text. And then Martina said, I can do it for 2 days, no problem. Here's the thing. It is a rebellion, but it's also survival. So we ended this very short description by talking about, slow system collapse and climate change that will inevitably cut us all off. And so if you learn and use how to cut off media, new or old, whatever, you can actually have a better chance of surviving mentally, first of all. And where it's really, really critical is the young generation. So we're all old school when we could survive. So you unplug us, we'll do fine. But you unplug some of my students and they're like totally useless. In other words, it's a great vehicle for manipulation. And so if you think of politics and political manipulation, which we're already deeply in, it's very dangerous for the young generation. And so our discussion started getting deeper and more interesting, but we only had 20 minutes, so. And then you interrupted us with random thoughts, so. Does anybody from the group want to say anything? Like I was thinking Hytham.
Still...
Oh, sorry, we're missing one person. I apologize.
Yeah.
So you want to add?
Do you want to add something?
You want to add something?
You are sitting together. It's great.
All right.
That's right.
Can you
Bonded.
sit on? Hello. All right, it's on. So what I thought was interesting about our group is that there were a number of presenters, like people who were opening art centers that were intermedia or were oriented towards technology and were interested in talking about how to bridge, how to connect to people who go to museums that deal with technology. And was that right, Eric? That was sort of a common thing. And there were actually 3 people who were doing that. And what they cared about was connecting to people through the resonance of the piece, through the ability to connect to people, humans, regular old humans, in nonverbal, like I think sort of, Olga, what you're talking about with healing or unplugging gives you access to dealing with things that aren't informational, that are dealing with connecting to people on a nonverbal, resonant, emotional level. And that was true of, there were 3 people, and they were from different countries, and they were all talking about the same thing. And yeah, so that was like cool. And, and yes, what? Yeah.
All right, I just want to add one thing, because we did talk about, you know, like normal art versus media art, and that media art probably likely is a transitionary sort of moment, and eventually it will be all back into art. And I mean, the fine art is probably also not at the, what to say, has its own crisis, let's put it that way. But what I remember particularly, what I found important, there was this comment that one of the staples of media art is the participatory aspect, right? That it brings people together, that you become part of the artwork and so forth. And then there was a discussion that what actually is participatory, and does this mean that the art outside of media art is not participatory, right? Which for me is like a long-held sort of belief that often like fine art or art that is like old art, ancient art, is actually more participatory, more resonant than media art, which is often like these reactive setups that only go so far. Yeah.
So, sorry about that. Now, yeah. And then, so do we have any comments from all that's been said? Does anybody want to say anything that they feel from the art institution to unplugging? There's a whole, I mean, one would think that there's a very common thread that's running through a lot of what's been said. And so I wonder if any of you have any thoughts about that can help us, you know, because we're in a moment. Oh.
Give him the microphone.
It's actually, I want to have a note with a question from our group when we said we unplugged. In the moment of collapse, then we will have to find ways of survival. And that's for human being in general. Can media artists find ways of survival if the world collapses?
You've got a question, but I don't know if anybody can answer that, because it's. I think it's a lot to put on. It's a lot to put on media artists. It's hard enough to switch on a computer without saving the world. I can't even switch off AI.
She was waving at a friend.
Sorry. I don't know.
She was waving.
Oh, right. But there's, one of the things that doing the Encyclopedia of New Media Art and dealing with all these artists and talking to them is that we're suddenly at a moment where the encyclopedia comes out at exactly the sort of same time that AI takes off. And so you have this strange kind of feeling that if you were going to write an Encyclopedia of New Media Art next year, it would be absolutely, totally different from what's happened. And there would be a kind of totally different sort of attitude maybe coming through. And I think this is an interesting moment in time and maybe a more reflective look on what media artists actually did and give with their research would be a very good thing to look at. Because they did so much to try and inform us of some of the probabilities of technology and what might happen, but they also had that fetishistic thing which all media artists to some extent wanted the next computer, wanted the next CPU, wanted a higher definition video, and so on. They're all shaking their heads behind me. No, we didn't, but it seems like they did. And we all wanted to sort of, and that rush to change, and then the entropy and the lack of immortality. In other words, a lot of the work that people would have done would, unless they sealed it off in a computer, would not work anymore. Now this change is unprecedented in fine art. And so I put media art in with fine art, not in with the other areas. And its ability to try and adapt and change. So we're right on time, and Derek's got a question. Brilliant. Sorry, Derek, we're out of time.
I'm sure we're out of time, but okay. I've launched the idea of quantum physics art. It's already happening, but forget that. What we should not forget is that generative artificial intelligence is taking our language, taking our imagination, taking our sense of direction, taking our judgment, taking our memory. All these things are coming out of us in some machine, and a lot of it doesn't stay there. I would love to know what artists can say about the fact that technology is now taking control of language. Language, the only thing that distinguishes humans from anything else.
Well, that's a bit of a big question. So, yeah, so if you want, I'll just answer it in a couple of words. No, it's a difficult, but if you go back to your quantum, it is the thing that you can think all these things, and then when you are asked what you're thinking, you have to translate it into a thought. So you're still consciously thinking of all these things, and it's that translation to thought that's a killer, because the thought can never be as good as what's happening up there. So it always collapses it, like a collapse of a quantum system from a wave to a particle. Well, that's what David Bohm said about 1950 about language. You know, but do we have to wrap up? I've got one more question. Can we have one more question, Kurt?
She's got a question.
Oh, sorry, two more questions.
This is just a short comment to his, just a short response. Yeah, just, sorry.
Short response, okay.
No.
A response. You have a new question?
No.
You have a question?
Yeah, this is very short. So just in Plato, there's an interesting passage where Socrates talks about print in just the way that you talked about AI.
Thank you. So I just wanted to jump on what you just said before, the fact that media artists always want the new computer, the new CPU. But to me, personally, my own, the thing that I really love to do is to more dig on poor images and media archaeology in a way. And so sorry, I'm trying to construct the question. It can be taxified as nostalgia, to be interested in what was made before. So in a way there is nostalgia, and in another way there is consumption. So is there any middle ground in between? I don't know. Sorry, it was a bit unclear. I'm a bit tired.
No, it's a good question. I would say that it slides. You know, I mean, everybody loves the photographs of the 512 line video thing, a documentary of the, you know, there's something about that aesthetic that's so beautiful. But it wasn't beautiful at the time.
I just want to react to this briefly.
Okay.
I think that's the question of the middle ground is actually is a really good question, and I don't think there is. The nature of it, right, is because it's so seductive, addictive, all of that. We love, anyway, all these things, and now everything is based on it, everything. And that connects to the question about the collapse, right? Will media art survive if it collapses? And that's, in a way, the question is more, will anything survive if there's a collapse? And I remember, you know, California, right? Everybody has an earthquake kit. This is like, if you have a house, if you live in California, you're prepared for the big one. And that's a kit. So I think we need a kit for the end of digital, the end of the fabric we built, right, in the last 40 years. What had happened in the last 40 years.
Solar generator. Exactly.
No, I mean, I agree with this. So what's also so disgusting about this whole movement of AI is the energy. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a really big problem. So the question is, what do we need to continue? That's the question. Do we need all this to continue? Probably not.
I think we should wrap it up there.
Exactly.
Just starting, you wanted to close it.
But where, go off, what's up? Get off these maniacs who are controlling everything.
I'm not. Okay, stay.
All right.